Good morning again. Is it still morning? Good afternoon. Okay, so I've been asked to speak about the mining landscape moving forward, aligning the industry to Vision 2030. So actually, yesterday evening I went to the Vision 2030 website, and in the search bar I searched for mining. I didn't find much, but there is one thing which is very important, which Joe has just talked about, and it's the recognition of Base Titanium as a flagship project for Vision 2030. But we would like to see more of the mining industry on the Vision 2030 website. We believe it's to become a significant pillar, economic pillar of Vision 2030. The Kenya mining landscape, you've heard a lot about it already, so I'm just going to be repeating things. So if we go just in a anti-clockwise direction, you have Kenya Fluorspar Company, which had a capacity of about 100,000 tons before activities were suspended in 2016 due to market reasons. The ministry believes that there is still some potential there for development, and I hope it's true. It's something that certainly we need to look at. You have Acacia Mining with a very nice little discovery of a gold resource, 1.3 million ounces at 12.1 grams per ton. To put this into context, 1.3 million ounces is not huge, it's very good, but the grade is very good. 12 grams per ton, that's really very, very interesting. The gold mining industry is not only represented by Acacia. We have two operating mines, two formal operating mines. Karebe Mining, located just east of Kisumu, and Kilima Pesa Gold, located in Lolgorien. These are two very small mines. It's about as small as you can get for a mechanized operation. It may sound insignificant, but it's actually very significant, because these sort of mines, per ounce produced, employ many more people than the large-scale ones. So this is the type of project which has been proven it's possible to develop in Kenya, and we would like to see many more projects like this. We have Tata Chemical, a company which has been operating for more than 100 years, if I'm not mistaken, and which is currently producing about 300,000 tons of soda ash per year. That makes it one of the largest producers on the planet. You've heard about the Mrima niobium and rare earth elements deposit at the coast, which was previously held by Cortec. According to the reports prepared by Cortec and Pacific Wildcat, the resources would be around 1.5 billion pounds of niobium oxide and around 4 million tons of total rare earth oxides contained. It's a very nice deposit. It's not huge, but it's high grade. We have other rare earth element deposits in Kenya, but this one is the most interesting. First, because it is located at the coast, so near export facilities, and also because the carbonatite, which is the host rock of the deposit, is very, very weathered. This is one of the reasons why the grade is so high. And because it is weathered, it is also easy to mine. You don't have to blast the rock, you can just dig it, it's free digging. We have Base Titanium. I'm not going to say anything after the excellent presentations we had from Joe. Still at the coast, we have some manganese deposits, which there has been some exploration. Exploitation has taken a bit of time to take off, but there is good potential, probably more than 30 million tons of manganese ore. It's low grade. It's about 25% manganese, so it's low grade as a manganese ore, but it can be upgraded. The metallurgical studies which have been done have shown that it can be upgraded to a concentrate of 40-45%. And last, of course, a great part of the Kenya mining landscape is limestone mining. For cement factories, I've just put the name of a few companies, the old-timers. There are some new companies also. So these are the main formal large-scale companies or potential large-scale projects that we have at the moment. If we look at small-scale mining, in my opinion, in the opinion of the Chamber, equally important, because small-scale mining has a lot of potential in generations of job and generation of economic value in a remote area where people have nothing else. There are mainly two categories. There is gold and colored gemstones. If you look at colored gemstones, most of the activity is actually already legal. People have licenses. Why? Because under the old Mining Act, we had something that was called a mining location, and people had learned that if they wanted to do mining, they had to get a mining location. Now with the new act, these mining locations are being converted into mining permits. So in terms of gemstone mining, one of the biggest requirements is training and resources to modernize the way artisans are operating. In order to do this, in my opinion, we need very well thought development plans. When we come to artisan gold mining, this is mostly illegal mining. Most of the artisans producing gold in Kenya are not operating on their own licenses. They are operating just in the bush, mostly on existing licenses of large-scale operators, which is illegal. Many of them are also operating using mercury and cyanide. So even before we start to talk about training and resources, we need formalization of these artisans. And there are two avenues to do this without infringing on existing rights. The first avenue is that when a large-scale company relinquishes a license or part of a license, and there are artisans there, in my opinion, the ministry should jump on the opportunity to set up cooperatives, to set up pilot projects, and to formalize these artisans when the ground becomes free. I'm talking about this because myself, I'm a shareholder of a company called Pinsapo. Last year, we relinquished one of the two blocks we were holding, and this block had several artisan mines. The ground, nobody has applied for it yet. It would be an excellent site to do a pilot project to formalize artisans. The second option to formalize artisan gold miners is to have a legal framework to allow them to operate on large-scale licenses with the consent of the license holder. This is something which is done in other countries, and it's an avenue which could really be done because in most cases, the artisan small-scale miners coexist with the large-scale miners. So it's just to put a framework to this. So for Kenya, what is the short-term development potential? We don't have any large projects in the pipeline, or very few. So the short-term development potential lies into small-scale mining. For gemstones, we need integrated gemstone mining programs. This is not going in the right order, but it's okay. Gemstones especially, there is a lot of demand for gemstones worldwide. If we want to be able to supply this demand and to do marketing efforts to sell better our production, to increase prices of our gemstones, we need to increase production. There are two angles to this. One is to modernize and to assist the existing artisan and small-scale miners. The other one is to allow them to work in partnership with outside investors who will have more capacity. In terms of gold, same thing. We can modernize a small-scale gold miner after formalizing them. But like I've said, the model of Karebe mining, the model of Kilima-Pesa Gold is excellent because it creates a lot of jobs. And there are many opportunities in Western Kenya to set up similar mines. There could be 20 Karebe mines. These are all, you've talked yourself about the revenue produced by this mine. we could have this times 20, and the jobs times 20, and the economic impact times 20. Last, one of the big opportunities for short-term development potential is industrial minerals. We have lots of industrial minerals in Kenya. You spoke about diatomite, but we have also vermiculite, we have wollastonite, we have barite. There are many minerals that can be developed on a small scale. We have graphite also. Aside for these short-term opportunities for mining and development, Kenya is mostly exploration country. I've put this map of East Africa to show all these structures going north-south. Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, Madagascar. Mozambique is becoming a mining giant. Tanzania also, despite the concerns about the regulatory environment, which is changing a little bit fast. Ethiopia has got also a big mining industry. All these north-south structures are running through Kenya, be it the Rift Valley with the volcanics, be it the Mozambique belt. So we have a hell of a lot of potential in Kenya. All these commodities that are listed here occur in Kenya and can be found, new deposits can be found in Kenya. So what is required? I might look like I'm repeating some things. Licenses. Without prospecting licenses, there is no prospecting. Security of tenure. I'm not going to repeat it too much, but it's important. Geodata. We know that the airborne geophysical surveys are on the way. We know that the creation of the geodatabase is on the way. There are some other simple things that the ministry could be doing, like starting stream sediment sampling programs. It's inexpensive. The ministry already has resources, has geologists in the field based in the counties. It's just to put a little bit of fuel in the Land Rover to give them some bags. They can do the sampling, then bring back the samples to the lab. And this way we keep on building the database, the geochemical database of Kenya. Government support for artisan and small-scale mining, that is very, very important. There is a lot of value to be obtained from this. And whatever we do, a clear stand from the government. Clear rules that apply the same way for everyone, especially with licensing. I think that's it. Thank you.